In today's episode, we're going to cover how media agencies, advertising agencies, and other marketing groups rip off their clients. How are they stealing money and otherwise taking advantage of media owners and their people who want to advertise? I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. Now, I'm a little hesitant in sharing such information because it might give unscrupulous advertising agencies additional information and ideas on how to rip off clients, but I often hire advertising agencies to do projects. What you may not know is that I subcontract most of my ad placements. For example, I'm not physically, my focus is strategic marketing, program management, project management, risk management, the development of a business, not actually loading the ads in Facebook or loading the ads in Google, the Google ad platform. I don't go make the placements because I can hire ad managers to do that for me. So I'm a client as much as you are when it comes to working with an advertising agency. And when I'm auditing these advertising agencies, whether it's for the work that we're doing in-house or the work I'm doing for clients, there are certain things that I look for to understand how the project is working, because for every dollar that doesn't go towards acquiring a lead or acquiring a customer is a dollar wasted. So I'm constantly looking for ways the advertising agencies are ripping off their clients so that we can stop that in its tracks, so that my clients can be more smart about how this works and how ultimately we can produce more leads and more sales. In my mind, the sale is the confirmation that you are able to deliver value to a customer. The customer has made a vote with their dollars, and that's why we're tracking dollars. So the first problem that most ad agencies have is they'll teach their clients things that aren't true. Now, the advertising networks do this as well, but they'll teach impressions, exposure, and other factors that are difficult to measure. That way, when the ad campaign fails, the advertising agency can say, oh, well, you did pretty good for the economy the way it is. Or they can say, oh, you know what? It was a great campaign. It's just right now, customer sentiment is not moving in the direction that we need them to. Let's run the campaign again. They'll say, oh, well, it takes 7 or 8 exposures in order to generate a sale. So we're doing the right thing. Let's keep doing it. All of this is bullshit. Okay. Not only is it bullshit, it's designed to allow the ad agency to take credit for the wins and push off the blame for the failures. I will tell a client up front. In fact, a prospective client asked me a little while ago, can you guarantee that we're going to get our money back from these campaigns? My answer unemphatically is no. No. There are enough conditions in the marketplace that can cause the campaign not to work. A perfectly good campaign sent to the wrong audience will not work. A bad campaign sent to the right audience will not work. But the only way we can measure is not by exposure, not by number of impressions, not by surveying the people afterwards, is by seeing leads and sales attributed to that specific marketing campaign. Now, it is possible for one marketing campaign to drive sales that are not tied specifically or otherwise difficult to measure, but originated from that campaign. There are a lot of conditions where cookies get deleted and where things happen. But if you don't have a significant number of transactions, transaction is a behavioral interaction with a customer, people in a room, people on a mailing list, people on a webinar, people who've purchased products or services. If you don't have a significant number of those transactions that we can clearly attribute to the marketing activity, then the marketing activity did not do what it was supposed to do. Now, when we start tracking cost per lead and cost per sale, because that's the depth that we get into in strategic direct response, most marketing agencies will say that is not necessary. It is not necessary to take the cost of the camp. Now, this is a unscrupulous marketing agency. They will say, we're building brand. It's not necessary to measure the amount of money it takes to get people on a list, because we want loyalty. We want brand recognition. And that's difficult to measure. Well, brand recognition is bullshit too, because you can't really measure it until after you have the residual sales that happen that have little or no attribution. They can't be tracked in attribution because they're difficult in like repeat sales, but that consistency will build because you already know who the person is. So here's the example. The brand that the advertising agencies talk about is image recognition. Okay, so you can produce a conditioned response to things like Coca-Cola, Pepsi Cola. Uh, when you see a brand, you know what it stands for. That is a real thing. However, it takes hundreds of thousands of dollars per individual who recognizes your brand in order to make that happen. Now, if you're a billion-dollar company, not a big deal. You can spend that money. You're going to beer companies are going to spend a certain amount of money so that the stores will put it on the shelf. That's it. They don't care. And it's very weak, as you saw in Bud Light, that it doesn't take a whole lot for that brand recognition to change from being identified as America's beer to identified as beer nobody wants to drink because it's just swill water and piss. It doesn't take much. So brand, while it does exist, is not worth purchasing outside of the transaction with the customer itself, because you will, like Husqvarna, for example, people who use string trimmers and chainsaws and stuff know that Husqvarna is a company that they're loyal to, is a company that has parts available. They'll keep repeat purchasing the product. I tried a new brand, Echo, and I got an Echo chainsaw because it fit in my price budget. It had a local dealer. I know the dealer better than I know the product. Okay. I didn't buy it because I recognized the product. I recognized the dealer, and they've been taking good care of me for years. The kind of branding that you want is branding that you measure by repeat sales transactions. So when someone in the marketplace says, where do I get my mower repaired? You want to be the referral. You want to be the transaction, not the conversation. And again, ad agencies are going to tell you the conversation has value because at least they're talking about you. Now, it does have value when it's a publicly traded company because you can turn a negative conversation. So an investment company can create a negative conversation around a stock, buy it on the down low, meaning they're buying it when they're shorting it. And then when the company recovers, because it does have a natural state of customer loyalty, they can then make the money when it comes back up. To them, it doesn't matter that the initial state was here and the future state is down here when it comes to loyalty and recognition, because they made money on the dip. They bought into a position. So ad agencies very often work with these large organizations for what's called perception management or public relations, but that is not marketing. That is meant for social influence and other types of influence that's designed to highlight a platform, for example. You may not realize it that many of the mainstream marketing agencies and many of these smaller agencies work for Google, they work for Facebook, they work for Instagram, and you'll know that by their certifications. So they go get certified as a Google AdSense provider, meaning they know how to use the platform, and then they advocate the use of the platform because that's the platform they know how to use. Okay. Now that's not ripping off their customer. That's a proficiency in a platform. But if they claim that platform is better than any other platform and that their use of that platform is unique to that platform other than just being an operator, then that's ripping off clients, because every ad platform is just pretty much the same thing. It's either user generated content or publisher generated content with ads. That's all it is. Now, depending on the type of audience that comes in there, you can test your ads, and there opens the door to the next marketing agency. I should say scam. They're ripping you off. Marketing executives inside corporations and agencies will often tell you that you don't need to test your marketing. They just say they know what works, and when it doesn't work, they blame it on the economy. They blame it on a presidential campaign. They blame it on a certain demographic, because they're in the taking credit for what works and not knowing why it works. But ultimately, that is a way they rip off clients. Some people will say that the retainer programs are a ripoff, but that's not true. Retainer is just a way that you put money up front because they're going to dedicate staff to your campaigns. But it is a ripoff if they dedicate staff to your campaigns, but do it outside of your marketing analytics system. So there is one client that I haven't got him off of this program, but he doesn't know what ads are running to generate the leads that are attributed to sales in the business. They think they're coming from pay-per-click, but they could be coming from a mailing list for all he knows, because the pay-per-click leads go to some intermediary website and then ultimately get farmed over in an Excel spreadsheet every week to the company itself. So for all he knows, they could be blending lead sources and providing him, uh, lists rather than providing him actual customers. And they could be, this is another ripoff or scam that the ad agencies do when they generate leads. So you got a lot of lead generation agencies. They'll set up 4 or 5 customers, generate a lead, and send that lead to 4 or 5 different people. And so now you're showing up with 4 or 5 different people rather than showing up on your own with that connection to your own uh, position in the marketplace. Now, how do we avoid that? Well, we insist that all ad campaigns and all third-party promotions drive through your website. And that way you'll at least learn something about the people who are visiting your site. You'll be able to do some tuning. You'll be able to add that data from a campaign to the rest of your data to get what we call knowledge. And you'll ultimately be able to produce better results. Now, another thing that happens with ad agencies is they come in and pitch you. Now, they're going to come in and pitch about all the magical things that they can do for you. They're going to give you sample ads. What you may not know is that most of that's put together by interns. Um, and they were assumed they know what works for your business. And the feeling from the client perspective is that they got inside information and they're going to give me ideas based on what they learned with other people's money, which is not true. They basically go to these ad books and they just mock up some campaigns. Mock up campaigns. That means they are making a mockery of some campaign by getting you some framework, and then based on your interaction in the room, they are selling you on engaging in a campaign. There are some basic campaigns: lead generation campaigns, new customer acquisition campaigns, repeat sale campaigns, referral model campaigns. If the agency knows these things and can run tests to know which work for you, then you can get the results. You don't need a Super Bowl ad. You don't need a big fancy, image advertisement. You don't need it clever. You just can go with a straight pitch to highly qualified prospects and get people on a list. That's why I like direct response. There's no beating around the bush. There's no creative campaigns. It's just speaking the language of the buyer and have a conversation with them and invite them for a solution. There's a little bit of education in there. There could be some training at different levels of your buyer list. And then there's ultimately, once you get an understanding who the buyer is, just find more lists. You don't need to do more advertising on the same channel that didn't work before. And because you're measuring, it didn't work. So go get the next list. Now, an advertising agency isn't going to go get the next list because that's a lot of work. Researching lists, testing lists, it's not very exciting. Imagine you're working in an ad agency and you go through and produce a control. Okay, a control is an ad that we know works. And that we know that ad works on website A. Now, instead of coming up with some wild new idea, we're now going and putting that ad that we know works on website B. And then we're going to put it on website C. And then we're recoding everything. We're comparing media kits to see whether or not these are good matches as audiences. We're doing statistical measures to determine whether or not the results we got from website A is typical for website B, and if they're overall predictable for some future website C. That is math. People don't start advertising agencies to do math. Now I do, because I'm in the strategic side. I love it when clients go from, a $25 cost per lead to $26 cost per lead, And an ad agency will say, well, that's bad, but their profit per sale tripled. So I don't care how much it costs to get a person on your list. I care the profit per sale. And if the profit per sale covers all those other costs, then we don't really care. So it is possible to spend a little bit more for the lead and lower your cost per sale and ultimately increase your overall customer lifetime value. Now, the reason a lot of ad agencies don't track this, and the reason that they do dog and pony shows, and by the way, when I worked for government contractors, I was the technical salesperson on the, I'd go in, I'm more of a systems administrator. I would go in and set up the computer system and be on hand while they did pitch demonstrations for 25 million, 50 million, $100 million contracts to the federal government, including foreign militaries and other things. So I've seen the sales transactions from a few $100s a month all the way up to $100 million on a 5-year contract. The dog and pony show is more exciting than figuring out what works and repeating it over and over and over again. And the great thing about direct response marketing is that it's easier to find a new audience than it is to develop a new product. So you can get a good product, you can get a good pitch for the product, and then you can just keep cookie cuttering it after one another. And this is, again, catalog sites, publishers, folks who have services, high ticket services. It's not about the next latest and greatest thing. A lot of advertising agencies will come in and they will say, hey, this is the latest trend. Everybody's going to TikTok. You got to get out to TikTok. Once you master TikTok, you're going to be rich. Well, they're repeating the same thing over and over to sell you, because last year it was everybody's on Facebook. You got to do Facebook. Social media is the latest thing. I remember back when there were CDs and people were saying that you could just mail us informational CD to somebody and they could watch your presentation on the CD or the DVD, and they would call in, and that was the greatest latest thing. There was fax broadcasting, there was email marketing, internet marketing, and you'll notice that this trend goes if you search for is dead. So if you look for email is dead, direct mail is dead, fax broadcasting is dead, you'll always see these trends where the ad agencies start talking about how one thing is dead while this new thing is the latest, because unfortunately clients will chase the shiny new objects. I don't want to get too carried away with this. There are good advertising agencies out there, but again, I offer auditing services because you don't know how good they are until you check their work. And when you check their work and don't find anything major, or you check their work and yes, their lead attribution is clean, those are actual leads, not just names on a list. When you're able to convert, you're able to ratchet up your conversion rates and manage your cost per lead and manage your cost per sale. When you're able to have a cost per sale that is significantly higher than your competitors in the same marketplace and still be profitable. And so I'm going to focus on from the accounting side to the customer, your customer oriented profitability, large market segmentation, and then I'm going to use that to audit the front end campaigns. So for example, if your target customer is between the age of 35 and 45, male and into outdoor activities, but your website's attracting people from 18 to 25 and that are living in cities and they've never been outdoor in their life, then that campaign from an audit perspective has failed, and the remediation is to redo the campaigns or the platforms in order to get the correct demographic to your site. So I don't know. A lot of ad agencies will say negative things about me from time to time. They'll be frustrated. I'll get little hate messages coming in on my website because I really do believe that when you can measure, you can repeat. And the measuring is math, but it's not that hard. It's also psychology, and that is easy to model. But ultimately, as a marketer, you get better results. Your customers get wealthier. They get, not fresh campaigns, but they get campaigns that work consistently. And ultimately, your dollar is invested. More importantly, circulate it. So it goes into the ad campaign and then it comes back with new customers rather than sending, ad agency kids to college or paying for their fancy suits or paying for their fancy offices and PowerPoint presentations. You're instead will be paying for sales and customers, which is the way it should be for all businesses. So if you have specific questions about a campaign, maybe you've seen something I didn't mention here, I'll try to link to my previous podcast where I talked about how ad agencies rip off their clients and what you can do about it. Um, there are powerful ways to get, create, and keep new customers. And they, the ad agencies just don't know about these ways because they're not as exciting, and sometimes they do fail. So it is entirely possible for you to put a lot of money in a campaign and nothing happen. That nothing happening with the right analytics, with the right understanding of your marketing, the right understanding of your customers is a lesson learned rather than a failure. But framing it as a failure and blaming something outside of your control doesn't give you anything you can do something about. And that's why I feel advertising agencies very often bilk their customers. They get them on retainer programs. You'll get tired of them and get a new advertising agency. You'll believe things like the economy's bad or customers just don't have any money when that is not the case. There is always somebody in every market who can afford what it is that you have to offer. It's your job to find them. And at times it can be hard to find them. And you got to turn over a lot of frogs before you find that prince. But with accountable direct response advertising, where you're measuring, where you're got proper lead attribution, proper sales attribution, where you're looking at the customer psychology, you will get results over time. You will learn what works and what doesn't. And that's how I help clients create key profitable customers. I'm Justin Hitt with Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. I've helped clients create hundreds of millions of dollars in new business using these methodologies. I've also applied these methodologies in risk management and other areas of business development in order to make companies more profitable and to help the owners take home more money. I can go into case studies with you on a discovery call. If you have any additional questions, visit me at www.adbriefings.co.uk, where we focus on building your agency. Even if you don't want a big agency, we help you build an accountable agency that is a good steward of its customer, builds high quality accounts. So you don't need a lot of new accounts. You can ultimately have a small portfolio of advertising clients where you're writing their copy, where you're helping them with campaigns, where you're backfilling the areas that you don't want to be involved in, yet still getting some revenue. That's what we do at Ad Briefing's Copywriting Tips. Thanks for listening to the podcast. I'll see you in the next one. I'm Justin Hitt.